Hello, Ashley.
Hey Mika, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good to see you. I like your background way better than mine.
Huh. Yeah, I've done so many of these in the last 6 weeks that I figured I might as well have something inspiring in the background. So even though I do think that my office room is inspiring as well, but it's one of my favorite stadiums in the world, and it's one of my favorite clubs in the world. It's Benfica home stadium in Lisbon.
Nice.
So I'm
Nice.
gonna go and get a glass of water. I'll be right back. I think we got 6 minutes left, right?
Yep. Yep. What's up, Griff? Hi,
Howdy.
Anna. How you doing, Griff?
Living the dream.
Always the best answer.
Ah.
What's up, Sophie? Hey, Skeet. What's up, Nick? How are you, buddy?
Good.
Good. Good to see you. What's up, Isabella? give it another minute, okay, Mika?
Yeah, I got time.
Perfect.
You know, you should have done in your marketing is you should have had me before Alyssa Nair and Ali Long, you know.
No, I put you in the same class for sure.
You're gonna give like a club car magnet or sticker or something for the 12 people who are actually interested in this?
Maybe. The rest of them are going to be really upset once they see the recording and realize that they missed it if they miss it.
Yeah.
Coach.
Oh, Josh,
Yeah.
leave at 6:15 meeting.
What's that, buddy?
I have to leave at 6:15 for my team meeting.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we're recording it so you can watch it later, okay? Thanks for being here till then. Are Eli and I'm sorry, are Ellie and Issa getting doing stuff with their teams in Richmond?
Yeah, they're I mean it's interesting. They're doing various things. Ellie's team has definitely been doing more. They've been doing all kinds of things. Like they've had just Zoom hangouts and then they've been doing like video analysis and they both have the Techni app also for their like from their club. So but as far as like team activities, Issa's teams haven't done as much as Ellie's teams. So it's been interesting.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, well let's get going here. If
All
that's
right.
okay with you.
Yeah.
So first first of all, thank you so much for your time and
Yeah,
for
my
being
pleasure.
here tonight. Yeah, and I'm just gonna kind of introduce Mika. So Mika is currently the associate head coach of the Richmond Kickers. That's a professional team in Richmond. Prior to that, he was the ECNL boys commissioner. He coached women's soccer at the University of Richmond. He was a director of soccer at a prestigious school called Shattuck St. Mary's, which is high school. And he also was the assistant women's soccer coach at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington, which is where I know Mika from. Mika was also the assistant director of graduate liberal studies when I was there. So Mika was my coach, he was my teacher, he was my academic advisor. Huge role in my life, such a mentor. And then just a few interesting facts about Mika. So we teach you guys moves all the time, and one of them is the Cruyff. Mika actually played in Finland for a coach named Teo de Jong, and Teo de Jong was a teammate of Cruyff's in the 1974 World Cup final. So yeah, so that's a pretty cool fact. And then on top of that, coaching wise, Mika's coached youth national team players from the USA, from Canada, Germany, Sweden, Finland, New Zealand. I think I'm missing one, Mika.
Belarus.
Yes. Yes.
And Jamaica.
Yes. So multiple different countries. So his experience is just unparalleled in terms of his playing career and his professional career. So with that, I guess I'll kind of ask you some questions based off your perspectives as a player and your experience as a player, and then we'll kind of go into experiences and perspectives as a coach.
Fire away.
Awesome. So first of all, just tell us a little bit about your journey through the game as a player, sort of your youth pathway, your college experience, and then playing professionally.
Okay. Do you have 5 hours? Well, first and foremost, thank you for everybody who's here listening and watching this. I really appreciate the opportunity. Any chance I have to talk with players and coaches about the game and the game we all love, I'm always more than happy to do so. And I hope everybody's doing well during this unusual time. But yeah, I grew up in Finland, in a town called Oulu, which is in the northern part of Finland. So I mean, it doesn't get much more north than that when you look at it on a global level. But grew up in a town where pretty much everybody grows up playing soccer and hockey and maybe basketball as well. And I was fortunate to go through youth years with a lot of great players, many of whom ended up playing in the top leagues in Europe, in the EPL, Bundesliga, the Dutch league, etc. And when I graduated from high school, I came over to the US and played 4 years at UNC Wilmington. After graduating from Wilmington, I went back home to Finland and played 5 more years professionally. And it was around that time then I was getting close to 30 years old, and I started coaching, moved back to the USA in 2007, and I've lived here with my family ever since. So that's kind of the quick dash from growing up in northern Finland to coming here for college, and now having lived here for almost 13 years. As far as my playing career from youth onwards, like I said, I was fortunate to be in an environment where we had a lot of talented players, and I was coached by some very high level coaches. One of the things that I appreciate in looking back is the daily competition, because we had players who were all ambitious and motivated, and I loved the game. Every time we went to training, it was competitive, and everybody wanted to test each other and themselves, and I think that really molded me as a player, and it made the player that I became, and made me the player that I became. But also, it's something that as a coach now, I always look to either instill or have in every culture, every team that I coach. So, well, that's the broad strokes. That's the general kind of time lapse, if you will. But Ashley, if you have any more specific questions, we can dig deeper into the details of any part of that.
Yeah, so anyone else that we've had on before, like the two others that play,
Hmm.
one of the questions amongst players is always they want to know, when you were a player or when you're playing, did you play other positions as a player?
The short answer is yes. Throughout my career, there were times when I might have played a game or two in a different position, kind of scattered. Um, and I think there's something to be said about that as well, because it is really only possible if you know the game well enough for you to be a player where the coach can feel comfortable to put you in almost any position. And we talk about it among coaches, even in the pro game, that the best players in the world, you could play them in any position and they would do fine. You could play Leo Messi as a left back, and he would know how to play as a left back. Obviously, his best qualities are better suited for an attacking position. But the point is that the best players, on every level, could play multiple positions based on where the team needs them. More specifically to me, there's a couple of interesting stories in my career. Um, when I started playing, I think I was 5 years old when I joined my first team, and back then, I mean, everybody probably played every position, but when I was starting to get into more like what in America is, I guess, travel soccer and higher levels of competitive soccer, I was a nine. I was a center forward, and at U15, I scored 40 goals. We had a great team. I had a blast. It was a really fun year. We had a lot of success. We won tournaments. We finished second in the National League. But at the end of that season, when I was about to enter what in Finland is like the proper academy level at U16. The academy director said that, Mika, we're going to make you a center back. And my jaw dropped, and I just uttered the word, like, what, 40 goals wasn't enough? And I didn't realize that it actually came out of my mouth. And I said, I'm sorry, sir, but I just, that was what I thought. And I'm just like, why and how and what? And he said, we've watched you, as you know, and we have, individual development plans for players. And they said that if you want to play on the next level, then your position is going to be center back or central defender. You're a really successful 9 as a U15 player, maybe even next year. But you're not going to be a 9 on the next level. Sure enough, I was a center back and a holding mid, a 6, 4, 4, 5, or 6, pretty much throughout my career. I was a captain on most teams that I played for. I was very fortunate to be on very good teams. We won 3 national championships out of the 4 in the academy, and I was usually a center back or a defensive center mid, except for my second last year of playing. And I think this ties in with what I was saying earlier in terms of, if you develop as an overall all-around soccer player, you never know when that might become an advantage, or when it might become something that's really important to not only yourself but the team. It was supposed to be my last season playing. I had signed a contract where I had agreed to a season, and then I had a player option. And I had already told my wife that this will be it. I'm playing for my last season, and we had a new ownership group who bought the club. Dutch brothers and another investor from Holland bought the club, and appointed the other one of the brothers as the manager, the head coach for the club, and that was Theo de Jong, the man who played in the World Cup final for Holland with Johan Cruyff. The first thing we had when the new coach came to town, we had individual player meetings, and that's when everybody found out what the club was going to do with them, whether you're going to be kept or loaned somewhere or cut, sold. And my meeting with the new coaches started with questions. And first question they asked, so Mika, you know who we have signed, you know who we've kept from last year, so you know the roster. Where do you think we have the biggest needs? And I thought about it, and I said, well, we really need a striker. We need somebody who can score goals, and then we don't really have a left-footed defender. Nobody on the left side defensively. And coach said, yes, I knew you would know that. I know you're an experienced guy and a smart player. So where do we have the biggest surplus? And I'm immediately, light bulb goes off, and I'm thinking to myself, oh man, is this how he's going to lead me to the fact that he's going to get rid of me? Because the fact of the matter is, and I said to him, well, we have a surplus of central defenders. And I'm thinking, all right, cool. Like, you could have just let me know that, we don't have any room for you, or we don't have any plans for you. And he said, yeah, I knew you would know that as well. And here's what we're going to do. Here's where you figure in. You're going to play as a left back, and we're going to buy a striker. And as a reminder, I'd played as a 9 when I was a youth player, and then I was a center back and a holding mid, and I'm naturally right-footed. And I'd never played as a left back in my life, and that was my 4th season as a professional player. And he said, the fact of the matter is that if we have to spend money on a left back or a left center back, and a striker, we're going to have to compromise. We're going to get an okay in both positions, but we really want to find a really good goal scorer, and we think you're going to be more than capable as a left back. Your left foot is just as good as your right foot, and we're very comfortable with you in that position. And then the last piece that he said has been one of the biggest lessons that I took from my own playing career as a coach. as a future coach, is he said, you're going to enjoy playing as a left back more than you would if you played your normal position, center back or holding mid, because we're going to attack with both fullbacks. We're going to have three central players stay back. You know, if you get around halfway line, you're not going to go much higher than that. But if you're playing as a left back, you can go anywhere. You can overlap the winger. You can go inside. You can go wide. You can go high, as long as you do your part defensively. And as I said, it was supposed to be my last year playing, but I had such a blast playing as a left back that I at the end of the season I told my wife that I'm taking the player option. And she said, I thought you were going to be done. And I said, so did I, but nobody wants me to be done just because I thought that I would be. I want to be done when I know that I'm ready to move on. And I played one more year. So sorry to go on a
No,
monologue there, but
no,
I
I
think
love that. I
I
love that
think
story.
those two stories say a lot, because I wouldn't have been in a position like that if I hadn't early on, if I hadn't understood to embrace the value of really developing the weaker foot to the level that I really am 2-footed. It was funny the other day in training with the Richmond Kickers pro team. We were working on defensive set pieces, and I had the team in terms of I was working with the defending unit with the defensive set pieces, and our head coach was working with the attackers. So I was the one serving the balls in, and one of our guys was like, Mika, are you left-footed? And I said to him, like, no, not really. And they looked at me and I was like, no, I'm not. So it was really cool. I mean, I'm way past my time as a player, and I was a decent player, what I would call, but it's certainly something that I think if I think how it shaped my life, that I took the time to really develop my skills with my weaker foot too. I mean, it's really shaped my life in soccer.
Yeah, I think that's a great message for what you just said in terms of developing that technical proficiency with both of your feet, but also the open-mindedness. You know, there are some players that if you were to ask them to play a different position, they might not respond to that the way that you did. So I think that's a great message for our players. And just to follow up with that, I would ask you, do you think that versatility in playing different positions like that made you a better teammate and now made you a better coach?
Yes and yes. I think well, for sure, as a team captain, you're expected to know what's going on everywhere. Otherwise, how can you guide and instruct your teammates? Sometimes you're supposed to help them by letting them know what they're supposed to do. And I think so. There's the tactical piece of it, and then obviously being able to play different positions, you see it from their perspective as well. That versatility, just for me as a player, I thought it was very, very helpful in also building the relationships with my teammates, because I was able to be in their shoes, quote unquote. But then most certainly as a coach, I think because of what I was like as a player and because of the situations that I was in as a player, um, I would definitely say that it's also part of the reason, part of my formation as a coach in terms of why I have become the coach that I am.
Gotcha. That's great. Um, I have to ask you this real quick. So, what were some of the biggest what were some of the biggest lessons passed on to you from Theo DeYoung?
Oh, there's so many. It's funny because he only coached me for one season, but I am the most grateful to him about so many things about how I coach. I mean, if you think about it, I love the game. I mean, I honestly think that I was born with cleats on. But this is someone who made me want to play one more year. You know, when I already thought that it's time for me and the relationship to soccer to be different, that I'm no longer the player. But I mean, I didn't think that anybody could actually do that. But the way he coached us, I always thought that soccer out of all of the other team sports is the one that is by far most the player's game. It's in the hands of the players, you know. Whatever you are, you're U7 or you're a pro guy, whatever the length of your half is, it's you and your sisters or your brothers figuring things out on your own. And I mean, as coaches, we're screaming and yelling and you know, trying to make things happen from our limited view on the bench. But hey, most of the times the players don't even hear us, right? And if they do, and if they have to react to what we're saying, may not even help. My point is, soccer is the player's game, and that's to me something that is at the heart of the game, and I think it should never be forgotten. And so what happened to me in that year is Theo de Jong, who played in the World Cup final, came to Finland and said, we're going to play total football like the Dutch national team. And people were mocking him. People were saying, like, really? You're going to make these Finnish guys play total football?
Tell,
like,
not to interrupt you, tell
yeah.
our group, for some of the young kids, like just briefly, what total football means.
So
Like,
total football means really you play attacking style. So your team dominates possession, but it also means that the positions are fluid. There is a formation 4-3-3 typically in the Dutch national team, but anybody can go really almost anywhere in the field because others understand that, okay, now if Ashley makes the run over here, I need to then fill her space, so that the formation almost remains intact. And then, I mean, if you see some of the clips from that team in their pressing, also it looks funny today when they pressed in packs of 8, 9, 10 players. So total football is just a description of the way they saw that the team was totally involved, and there was total possibility for interchanges and rotations among the positions if the players were good enough tactically and obviously also technically. So hopefully that answers the questions a little bit. I mean, I'm using a broad paintbrush here, but I mean, it is the most enjoyable way of playing the game. Like, imagine if the coach said, yeah, you can go anywhere as long as your teammates understand then that, okay, because she went there, I got to go here. And then that, you know, but so the point being, the lessons that I took from Theo were numerous, because he just came over and he guided us in us becoming the best players that we could become. I mean, everything we did was game based. Everything was ultra competitive, and it was sometimes interesting because I was fortunate to be on the starting 11. And when we would get into the training ground after the weekend, first team, we were on this field, and then the reserves were on this field. And we might play, you know, 7v3, 6v4, 5v5, different number games, and et cetera, et cetera. And then the guys who were not in the starting lineup were working on the field next to us in a lot more demanding skills in terms of physically, and they were really working hard, and they were trying to get to the break into the starting lineup. And then, so if you think of the competitive nature, and this is professional, so it's a little different, but teammates on two fields right next to each other, these guys are looking at these guys and thinking, wow, they're working hard, I need to make sure that I'm sharp here, because otherwise one of these guys is going to come here and I don't want to be there because they're running a lot more than, you know. So that competitive environment connected very much with what I was like as a player, because we had players who were, you know, younger player when we had the ambitious environment. But also the way he instilled confidence in me. I mean, think about my first meeting with him. He believed in me. He believed in my ability to be a really good left back for the team way before I even thought that I would. And then, so how he sold it to me, so to speak, in terms of, you're going to play out of position, but you're going to be great, Mika. I mean, if I can do that as a coach, empower my players to believe in themselves, and I've said that a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised if I've said it to you, Ashley, at times when I coached you, that if I believe in you more than you believe in you, then we have an issue, and we have to solve that issue. But as a coach, I think it's important to be able to instill confidence and empower your players to be and express themselves the best of their abilities. other lessons, it's important that everybody's on the same page, because we counter press before counter pressing was a term. We relied on each other's understanding of the game, because if I, as a left back, dribbled inside and we turned the ball over, then I needed to trust that I can do that because my teammates will have my back. So the game-based training environment, we never did any drills. We only did passing activities as part of the warm-up. But from that team, a lot of players went on to have very good careers outside of Finland in bigger leagues, and lots of lessons, smaller and bigger. I'll give you another one, and I mean, I could spend the rest of the night just talking about this, but he was a Dutchman who had no connection to Finnish culture prior to when they came over, and immediately he just started embracing the different cultures that we had on the team. And as part of it, he started learning Finnish. So one time he walked into the locker room and he was singing a song in Finnish. That was a very popular song at that time. And we did not know how to handle that, because he was the head coach who played in the World Cup final. So we were not sure if we're supposed to be laughing. But so then it was one of our international players who just burst out laughing. So it was not the Finnish guys, and then everybody rolling on the floor laughing, and Theo then, like, it just totally disarmed him. He started laughing, and he was like, "Guys, I was trying my best," and he was like, "Yeah, but it was bad." And so, but he never compromised his authority. But he was a great guy. Extremely good in managing the different personalities and embracing difference and embracing our culture, but it was never at the expense of, we always knew who's the boss. So
That's great.
I'm going to pause over there, because I mean, more things keep popping into my head, and I'm sure there's other things we want to talk about too.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about those over the phone personally.
Yeah.
I want to hear more.
Yeah.
So that kind of, I feel like organically we have shifted into the coaching piece a little bit. So just in terms of coaching, I know that you have a story that I really think is important for the kids to hear. But before we even go there, we have a question that kind of came in here.
Okay.
About what qualities do you look for in a player to play professional soccer?
I'm gonna zoom out a little bit more, because I think it's especially valuable for anyone in the youth game, not just professional soccer, in terms of what qualities do we look for. But going back to when you were listing the different countries' youth national team players that I've been fortunate enough to coach, because of that, I've had to interact with the head coaches of different youth national teams in different countries. And because I've done that, then it's allowed me little glimpses into the soccer identities of different countries, and how they look at, why are they choosing my player? Why is he or she considered for the national team? And again, I think it is pretty unique, actually, like you said. But I've coached youth national team players for both girls and boys, including last summer when we had one of our players played in the U20 Men's World Cup, Buba Kate, that plays for Columbus Crew right now. But so to answer the question, out of all of that variety of nationalities, and whether I've been recruiting for college or identifying players for a pro team, the first thing I always look at is, what is he or she trying to do? So I literally try to get inside of their head and see, okay, why did she do that? Oh, she saw that run happening on the weak side, or she realized that she's going to get doubled, or whatever it is. I look at what you're trying to do, because if you have game insight, if you have good ideas in your head, it's my job as a coach to help you gain different options for the ideas, but to help you technically and help you physically. I have a really good example of a player to use, and I'll try to make a shorter version of the story. But When I was growing up, there was a guy who was a very kind of lanky, gangly, not at all physical, not quick, not fast, not strong, guy who was my age. I played with him and against him, and he was a center midfielder. He was extremely skillful, and he had a good game inside, but he would lose the ball over and over again. But back then in Finland, we had national skills competitions, kind of like if you had Techni app stuff, but it's actually national skills competition. So you would know like who's the national champion in this or that activity. We were always wondering, like, is he ever going to actually become anything other than a juggler, or like a little cool little freestyler, right? And he almost kind of went under the radar from 15 to 16 to 17. And then I remember we played against his club team, and he played as a winger. He was strong and he was fast, and he scored 3 goals, and we lost 3-1. And he went on to play, I think, 14 years for the Finnish national team. He won the Dutch league with PSV Eindhoven. He played in the EPL. He played in the Bundesliga. He played for Panathinaikos in Germany. In Greece, as a winger, as opposed to a center mid. The point of the story is, to answer that question with this example, is he had the game inside and he had the skills. And at some point, all of us, all of the youth players, when biology has done its job, we've all kind of reached whatever height we're going to be, whatever growth we're going to have as human beings. After that, you can get so much stronger, you can get so much fitter, you can get faster, you can develop the physical side a ton. But if at 16 or 17 you haven't developed your gaming side and your technique, it's going to be a lot harder. It's going to be a lot harder for you to keep climbing and getting better and getting to the higher levels. And that is why qualities that we look for, we look at, okay, what are you trying to do? What are the ideas that you seem to have, whether you're defending, whether you're attacking, whether your team has the ball, whether you have the ball. That's the first thing. And often everything else follows from that. Okay, great ideas, looks like a really good game inside, but really has to develop overall technique. It's like the mind can be too ambitious for the feet, like, okay, I see that you're trying to do all of these things, but you never really connect the pass. Okay, you need to develop ability to receive and turn quicker. You need to be able to use your game inside to receive on a half turn and then play the ball, etc., etc. But everything starts with looking at, okay, how are you positioning yourself as part of the smaller units, in the defensive line or in the midfield or in the forward line, and then as part of the whole team, are you just running around and pressing when no one else is coming with you, and things like that. So
the phrase that's like probably overused in the United States, but people love to toss it around, like soccer IQ.
Yeah. I mean, if that communicates that, then use it.
Yeah. Okay, nice.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of that prompts another question for me, that topic. When you talk about intelligence level and ideas and things like that, the best way that we encourage players to kind of improve that is by watching a game.
Absolutely.
So my question for you would be, knowing you're an educator at heart, you're one of the smartest people I've ever met. How would you encourage players to watch the game? Because I know that with your own kids, and even with me, we've talked about how you're actually studying the game, how you're watching it.
This is tough. Do you know why? Everybody probably who's listening knows that it's really hard to watch a game for learning. Because if we watch soccer for learning, we wouldn't watch it. Come on, we know. I mean, things that we need to do to learn, we don't often like that. We watch the game because we love to follow the ball. We love a team or whatever. So, and that's what makes it hard, because it's totally different to watch something in order to learn. You have to work on it. You have to develop it. Then if you get to the point where you can watch it and enjoy, but also recognize the little things that people are doing, for example, then it can be exciting in a different way. But so looking at this unusual time period that we are in right now, you reference my own two children. So I have an 11-year-old son who's a pretty good soccer player, and I have a 14-year-old daughter who's also pretty good. They every morning when they wake up, they watch soccer, and the beauty of this time period when there's no games happening is that now when you watch, every game has already been played. So you don't need to be excited about the score necessarily, because sometimes you already know, okay, this game is going to be 3-1 or whatever. And you can discover older players, and there's so much value in going and finding, like, Zidane is the bald guy who's the Real Madrid head coach. Wow, some people say he was the best ever center midfielder. Now is a great time to watch those players, the players who played way before your time, and you wouldn't otherwise go and watch, because there would be new games every week happening. So I would highly encourage finding players in your positions now, and watching clips of them, watching highlight reels, or even going and watching full games. Watching a player who plays your position can help you develop not just your abilities to understand the game in your position, but when you really then start watching how your position is dependent on the people around you, then you can start developing your game understanding in the bigger picture. If you're a fullback, for example, and you're the right back, and then you go all the way wide in the build-up, okay? Where you go in the build-up, do you go wide enough? Do you go high enough? Or do you go too high? Or do you first go high so that you take the defender there with you, and then you come back for the ball, right? That determines when and where the goalkeeper or the center back, for example, is able to play the ball to you. You following me? Ashley, I know you're following me, but I hope everybody else is also. I'm trying to give a little, without being able to draw, just giving a little picture of, if you're a fullback, you're first looking at, okay, why is Trent Alexander-Arnold so high? Okay, he's pushing the defender there to create the space where he then wants the ball. And now Allison plays the ball over there. Okay, so Allison's actions were dependent on Alexander-Arnold's actions. So I would start small, and now is a perfect time because there's no games happening live. So you can go back to old games where you don't have to wonder if Liverpool or Man City or whoever you support is going to win.
That's awesome. That's great advice.
Yeah.
Two more questions just came in. The first was, is there a goal of also our director of coaching is a huge Liverpool fan, and he just said thank you for using Liverpool.
Okay. Our head coach is a massive Liverpool fan as well. So
Nice.
yeah.
So the question was, is there a goal of the Richmond Kickers youth system to develop players for the professional team?
That's a great question. The short answer is no. Our youth organization is a small part of our professional team, but right now I would say that overall in America, I think anyone who's in the, and Ashley, you can tell me if I'm wrong here. You can stop me. You can mute me as soon as if you hear something you don't want to hear, because with your club. But I do think that every youth club should focus on developing their players to become the best possible players they can become, so that Ashley becomes the best possible Ashley, and Mika becomes the best possible Mika. And for some, it may mean that one day they may have a chance to play as a professional athlete. For many, college is a great goal, especially in travel soccer, but I don't think anybody's job should be to develop players, like that specifically. I think if you look at the numbers in terms of who actually reaches the professional level, there's maybe 60 professional teams on the men's side, and then there's 9 now on the women's side in America. And how many players are there in America? 20 million, So point being, the odds for someone actually becoming a professional soccer player are so small that if you're saying like it's our job to develop players for the pro team, then okay, what about the others? Okay, if that's your job, then what do you do with the ones who don't make it? Like, did they fail or did you fail? You know, and I know this is getting into a bigger philosophical question about development, but I'm a romantic in that sense. I'm an educator, and I think just like schools, I think soccer youth clubs should do the best they can. Obviously, if you develop players for the pro level, that's awesome. And I do think that you should set standards where you're striving to really develop them to the best level that they can become. Because then everybody's going to be excited. You know, if you're going to be someone who said, yeah, I grew up playing with Ashley Myers, you know, and you know, then they maximize their potential as well, even if they never make it as a pro.
No, I think that's a great answer. I would never meet you on that. We actually have discussions like that all the time. I mean, our director of coaching on the call, Mike Griffith, always talks about making sure that every single player at our club is getting what they need to become the best versions of themselves. So I think that's spot on. The next thing that was the next question that we have is, what do you find that separates players mentally on the college or pro level? What the mental separation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. People always say it's a good question when they don't know the answer straight away, right? The reason why I said it's a very good question, because I love that it's one of the however many questions we're going to cover here, because it shows how important it is to attend to your mental side, your mental well-being, and depending on the person, it means different things. But I would say that what separates players who become either, you know, college players or pros, is their ability to adapt, is their ability to adjust, is their ability to be consistent with their commitment, to be consistent with their response to difficult times. Because, you know, a lot of times when people say, you know, dealing with adversity or dealing with challenges, people think the big things only, like if you get cut from a team, or if you don't make the team, or if something bigger happens. But you could also look at it that the life of an athlete is built on mistakes, because every training session, everyone makes mistakes. Coaches make mistakes. Maybe you stopped a play right when Johnny was about to score the goal that you've been looking for, but you just blew the whistle because it was 4 minutes done, right? That may be a mistake, because now Johnny didn't get to score the goal that would have given him confidence. Or you see my point?
Yeah.
So in terms of what mentally separates is your ability to be consistent with your actions when you don't do what you try to do, or when you don't do what you were thinking that you were going to do. Because at the end of the day, if you try to get to the next level, whatever it is, you know, for Leo Messi, the next level is he tries to win the World Cup. So there's always the next level, right? So the more consistent you are with your commitment, the more consistent you are with your approach, you're keeping things positive, understanding that we as human beings learn the most important abilities in life through failure, through mistakes. Think of a baby who's learning to move. You know, initially they can't even roll over. And then when they roll over, they're like, whoa, this is awesome. Now, oh, look, right? And they start doing anything and everything they can to try to get there, right? And then they're like, wow, look at you guys. Can I? And, you know, like, so, but to get to that, face planting and falling on your, you know, glutes is going to happen before you can actually start doing those things. Same mentality. We should preserve and embrace that same mentality when we try to get to the dreams and goals that we have as athletes. And that mentality, I would say, is one key separator. The ones who really become those top level players are the ones who understand that it's going to happen. They don't accept it. They hate losing. They don't like, looking at you, Ashley. They hate losing. They don't like not winning, or they don't like not winning a moment, but they don't let that get to them so that it would affect their next action.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
I love that. some of the players that I see some players with their faces. I don't typically do this, but I'm going to open it up real quick to see if any of you have, like, I'll call Nikki. Do you have any questions for Mika? No? How about you, Daniela? Not to put you guys on the spot. I kind of am.
Yeah, but you just did.
Yeah, I kind of am. But I feel like it's a good opportunity to let the players ask some questions.
Well, we got 15 more minutes. So if you got any
Oh, we
more,
got one.
keep firing away. But feel free to interrupt yours if they come up with any.
We do. Sophie has a question. Go ahead, Sophie. You can come off mute and ask.
If when you were younger, what would you go back to tell yourself? Like when you were younger, what would you go back to tell yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. And I love your shirt. It's the Maryland representing. Yeah, love it. I would go and tell my young self that you're going to love what you're going to do. Because I think in the moments when I'll give you a specific example. Like I mentioned, I was fortunate to play with players who made a better career, so to speak. You know, they played on a higher level than I did, and then they made more money, and in some kind of very clear ways, you could see that they had a quote unquote better career than I did as professional soccer players. But all of that was put in perspective for me when I started coaching, and I was talking with a lot of the guys that I either played against or grew up playing with, and one guy especially who had played in the EPL and played for the national team for years, and he said, you know, you're the one who did it best, because I went to college and I still played professionally as well, but then I had my degree and I was getting into coaching, and so I had a really good career as a professional athlete, but I also had my degree. So if the young me had been disappointed that I didn't make it to that high level where the others did, now the older me understands that even though that didn't happen, I've loved everything I've done, and I'm grateful for it, and some people around me have helped me understand that in different parts. It's a great question, Sophie. I appreciate it.
That is a great question. I like that. More kids on the spot. Noah, do you have any questions, buddy? No? Okay. Mika,
Hey, Ashley. Ashley, this is Mike. I have a question.
Awesome.
Hey, Mika. Hey, so, I mean, right now there's a lot of different talk about what's the best league and what's the best tournaments and things like that. I mean, can you, I mean, obviously as a director of coaching, I know there's a lot of different paths, but can you just talk that each player's journey is a little bit different?
Yeah. I mean, that is such an important recognition to make. I'll give you a quick story about a player that I coached when I started coaching. I coached a U17 academy boys team back in Finland, and it was in a typical European model, so to speak, where the youth teams are part of an organization that has a first team, maybe even the second team, where you are expected to develop players for the first team as part of what you do. My third year of coaching, we had our tryouts, and I said that let's do something different. Let's bring all of the current players, and we had 3 youth national team players on our U17 team, and I said let's bring them to the tryouts too, because I want to see how everybody who is trying out plays against the best players that we have. How else am I going to be able to evaluate how good they really are? And there was a player from our club's third team there, and this is U17, so they're 16-year-olds. There's a player from our club's third team in the tryouts that I'd never seen before, and he was holding his own against the youth national team center midfielder. And I turned to my assistant coach and I'm like, what's going on here? Like, why has he been on the third team? And you know, we looked at his profile and coach's evaluation. Like, he's been kind of late bloomer. He hasn't been really that interested. He hasn't, you know, been consistent in training, not always showing up. And I said, he's too talented for us to miss out on. we need to get him on our first team and see where he can really go. So you're looking at, someone who had been on the third team up until he was 16, and then others who'd always been, the top players in the age group. I'll fast forward to the end of the story because there's a couple of other really fascinating elements there. But he ended up being the first guy out of all of those who signed a pro deal, way before any of the youth national team players. And it was just that for whatever reason, in different parts of his development, he just hadn't ended up in the better teams. And that's a really tangible example of every player's path is different. More specifically to your question, I think especially because there's such a range in terms of how players are evaluated, what coaches value. Some coaches will value, hey, we're winning, we're getting soccer points. We have somebody who can really kick the ball far and wide, and then we got someone who can run and score, and we got a big goalkeeper who's going to make the saves. For example, that's one way of winning. That's one way of getting into tournaments. But then there's others who are like, we're okay. We may lose, and we're okay because these are the qualities that we like to develop. And if it means that we don't always win, then it's okay. My point in sharing all of that is, when you are a player, if you understand that if you think that you're in an environment where you feel like you're getting better every day, then you're in the right spot. If you're enjoying it and you feel like you're getting better, you're in the right spot. The opportunities to test yourself against better competition will come at the time when you're ready for it, or when your team is ready for it. Mike, I don't know if I answered in any way to your question. If you want me to get more specific, please let me know.
Yeah, no, you definitely showed that there's different paths. I guess what I was kind of saying is, just using this example here in Baltimore, I'm not sure what it's like in Richmond, but probably the same, is you have one club that'll say that the DA is the best. You have one club that'll say that ECNL is the best league. You have another that's taken the USYS path, and none of them are wrong for any of the players.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think, and that's a short and quick way of saying it. I've seen American soccer in the past 13 years from so many different angles. When I was at Shattuck St. Mary's, my first year there as the director of girls soccer, we didn't even have a league for the other team. So we just played friendlies. But what I did, because it was the older age group, I reached out to college coaches and said, hey, these friendlies are going to be worth you watching, because we got some good players, and we don't have access to the leagues or the tournaments that some of the other better teams do, but these players are still worth your time. So yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, Mike.
Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, last question. Oh, Daniela. Go ahead, Daniela.
You were talking about how, as a player, there's always a next level. When you were a player, did you ever doubt that you were able to go to the next level?
Yes, there were moments when I wasn't sure if I was going to make the team. For example, when I got picked for the academy, before they announced the rosters, I wasn't sure if I was going to make it, and the same thing happened here and there. One of them was when I decided that I'm going to leave Europe and try to get to the college in America. I wasn't sure if I was going to be good enough to play on the level where I thought that I was going to be good enough, because I didn't know. Same thing. I knew that I wanted to play professionally after college, but I wasn't sure if that was going to happen. I think it's going to happen. You're not always going to every day believe in yourself all the time. It's okay to have those doubts. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great question.
That was a great question. I thought that was going to be our last question for the night, Mika, but I'm going to let one of our coaches, Coach Skeeta, ask you a question.
Of course.
Yep.
How are you, Mika?
Good. How are
Awesome
you?
that you got to join us tonight, man. I
Yeah,
really
thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
One quick question, not really serious, but when you were younger, who did you admire as a player? Who did you look up to? And now that you are a coach, who do you kind of admire as a coach, and who do you kind of like try to pick and choose your coaching style from?
Yeah, I love that question. If I'm going to tell you about the players that I loved when I was younger, everybody else here is going to be like, never heard of him.
You'll be surprised.
I loved Pierre Littbarski, who played for the German national team when they won the World Cup in 1990. I loved Zico, who was an attacking midfielder for Brazil in the 80s. I absolutely love Zinedine Zidane. It's funny. I love that you asked that question because I've recently thought about it when I've worked with my own kids and our pro guys, and we've given them some players to study and watch. And I realized just recently that all of the players that I loved the most were attacking midfielders. Mm-hmm. Even though, I played as a 9 when I was younger and then as a center back and a holding mid. But it's the players who are exciting, who create something, who make things happen more regularly than the ones whose job is to defend. And I think it's fascinating because as a coach, I think the coach in me is a combination of that young kid, that 6, 7, 8, 9 years old kid who loved watching those skillful players, and then the more of the defending minded player that I became. Because the teams that I've coached, whether I've been a head coach or the first assistant coach or whatever the role I've had, have always been, we want to have the ball, we want to keep the ball, but we want to also attack fast if we can. So the second part of your question, coaches that I really kind of, idolize, so to speak. I have no shame of saying it. I'd love to be a combination of Zidane, Klopp, and Guardiola.
Oh wow!
Okay. I may only have the receding hairline in common with all three of them, but I actually think that the combinations of those three, the passion, the emotional side of man management that you see from Klopp, especially. I mean, he loses his glasses because he's celebrating a goal, and some of his irony when he's, especially in this last couple of months, when he was like, why would a soccer coach's opinion on something this globally serious issue matter? The honesty he has, the rapport he seems to have is very engaging and loving, and Pep is just a mastermind, and I think Zidane, what he did with Real Madrid, I thought was very impressive. And one of the things that hasn't, in my opinion, really gotten enough attention is he actually reduced Ronaldo's minutes significantly. And by doing so, he did two things. He developed 2 young players because they got more minutes, so they got more confident. And also Ronaldo became more effective and more productive with fewer minutes. But yeah, that's how I would answer it off the cuff. Appreciate the question. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Mika, I know that we had talked about you have another meeting at 7, and we have a coaches meeting as well at 7, but I cannot thank you enough for your time and sharing your experience. I mean, that you're just such a mentor to me, and I really look up to you, and I'm just so grateful that you were able to share this tonight with our club.
Yeah, no, it was my pleasure, and definitely when things get back to normal, I'd love to come by and visit you guys, watch you guys train, and see you guys in person. So
that would be awesome.
Yeah.
The guy that you were talking to, Mike Griffith, I'll just let him say goodbye as well. He's our director of coaching.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Mika, thank you for everything. We appreciate having you on. Great insight and a good listen for sure. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Everybody have a great night.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.